Hello friend, and welcome to Borgcast Original Series 2.9 with Peter and Amory.
Hello.
And we're covering The Crapple. Oh boy. We warned you. We warned you. Written by Max Elric, his only efforts. And
Well, I'm not surprised after this they'd have gone fuck off.
He's had a lot of work done by Gene L. Kuhn as well, although clearly not enough to save it. Directed by the Pevster. Oh, yeah. Actually, I've just been rereading a book I've not touched for a few years because it came out for the Trek 50th anniversary, covering the entire history of Star Trek, well, the first 50 years anyway. And there's interviews with the Pevster. And he talks about season 2 being where the wheels started to come off because the actors started demanding that their characters would not say that. Which sometimes they're right about. But other times, yeah, you can't grow and develop characters if they don't change a little over time, but they weren't going to allow that to happen. So, plus there's all the stealing of lines that went on.
By Shatner, presumably.
For the most part, although, apparently Nimoy was slightly guilty on that front as well. But anyway.
That's my comment.
Oh, right. Shall I take over now?
No.
Captain's log, stardate 3715.3. Our investigation of Gamma Trianguli 6 has suddenly turned into a nightmare.
Captain. The tricorder readings are totally inefficient.
Would you mind being careful where you throw your rocks, Mr. Spy?
It's over there, that way. I never saw anything like...
I am the eyes of all.
Let's get out of there! Jim! Spock!
So, an away team beams down that includes 3 red shirts.
And the 3 senior officers. We're back to that again.
A second team beams down McCoy and 2 red shirts. And there's like all this plant shit all around them. And Spock goes through the soil and goes, it's really fertile. And like sarcastically, Kirk goes, really? Like you needed your truck holder to tell you that, did you? Even at the poles, there's very little variation in temperature, and then he gives it in Fahrenheit, even though everything else is in metric at this point. Even things that aren't in metric now, if you see what I mean. I don't know what that's about.
And surely the poles can't be... I don't know about science, but that doesn't sound very likely, really. But there we go. Yeah. I mean, for everywhere to be green and lush, there's got to be water coming from somewhere. And anyway, let's not care about this show too much.
Well, there are consequences for that at the end in your section, because if all of this has been generated artificially by Val, presumably the poles
They're screwed.
Yeah. I don't. Stuff to do with temperature at the poles is to do with axis and proximity to the sun, which we don't know about. But you need to have certain conditions, like you say, certain variations and gradients in order to generate things like trade winds and currents and
Hello,
stuff.
Lila.
Hello. Come on then. Good girl. She just goes, makes noises and sticks her legs up because she needs help because she's a hefty lump. Yes, you are. You're a hefty lump. But we love you, Potato. Yes. So, yes. Yeah, I don't understand how it would... With less variation than we have on Earth, I get. Mm-hmm. Very little at all. I don't know how that works without Val, and so they might be in for a bit of a rude awakening. Mm. And then Chekhov says... they talk about how it's like paradise and like Eden, and Chekhov says that's just outside Moscow? Really?
Yeah, because Moscow's well known for being green and lush and warm and...
Yeah.
Also,
what's with this idea that somewhere warm is always good? Some people really don't get on with the warm.
No.
Some people prefer the cold. I mean, I'm not one of them. But I'm saying some people do. Anyway, there's a plant following one of the red shirts and spaffs him dead.
Wow. Seriously, do the crew get no training in avoiding what might be deadly flora? I mean, he just stands there and lets it shoot him. I mean, it's appalling.
Yeah.
Hendorf, he's called, yes. deaths, our first of many red shirt deaths in this one.
Oh, yeah. And then you get the reference, Paradise must have looked like this, which earwormed me with the... It's a horrible song, so just play a little bit of it.
Yeah, we're not having that.
No, not as I play out to. We've got better options.
I've got a much better option, yes.
So that's your teaser. But why did they make this comment about how, Paradise must have looked like this after the red shirt dies? Like, I would understand them talking about Paradise before the red shirt dies, because they don't know that there's anything wrong with it. But someone's just fucking died and they're still saying it's Paradise? What
well, no, because Kirk finishes the teaser out by going, did somebody say this was Paradise? Really appallingly delivered. He's really not caring about this story. And to be honest, he read the script, you can understand it.
Yeah. So, apparently this is Gamma Trianguli 6.
Yes.
What a ridiculous name.
It is, isn't it?
Isn't it, Lila? Yes, even you don't like the name, do you? No.
And rather than calling the inhabitants the triangulation, I don't know what you call them really with a name like that, they end up being called the Valians instead.
Instead of the trianguloids or
I'm
something.
surprised Lower Decks hasn't done this one yet.
Oh, maybe
I think they've done orange characters before now, but they really need to do the apple big time.
Anyway, there's a problem on the ship.
Scott's in charge again. Hooray!
Yay!
That's not the problem on the ship, but yeah.
Scotty's identified a problem on the ship, which is that the antimatter pods are being drained. And he said it's something to do with the planet. It's got strange electromagnetic fields, but at the moment it's not really a cause for concern. And Kirk's like, well, keep me posted, because basically, there might not be a cause for concern now, but that doesn't mean it won't be. And then Scotty's like, I could do with a walk in the garden. And it's like, right. Even though somebody's died, this is a fucking killer garden.
Yeah.
It's like Kew Gardens with triffids in it or something. Do you know what I mean? It's just...
Kirk says, if we're a little more careful, we shouldn't run into any more trouble, and then plucks another flower. And it's like, have you learnt nothing? That could be completely poisonous, stroke explosive, stroke... just what a nutter.
And again, Scotty's saying this, I could do with a walk in the garden, it must all be like Paradise shit, knowing somebody's died. I'd understand his response if nobody had died at this point. But I want to walk in a killer garden? What the actual fuck? So then Spock says that he's picking up good vibrations, which are subsurface and being artificially generated. And then Mallory gets called and told that he needs to do a recon to check out the village, but avoid actual contact with the humanoids.
He's played by Jay Jones. It's second of 7 appearances for him as various characters.
Not Sam Jones.
No.
And then Spock picks up a reading and he says there's someone watching them. And then there's an ensign. Do we get her name?
Yes, we do. She's Yeoman Martha Landon.
Oh, Yeoman, not ensign. Sorry, okay. And she's getting a bit stressed, understandably. And Chekhov is comforting her to be told off by Kirk they're not doing a biology experiment.
Yeah, a bit good coming from him, isn't it?
Yeah.
I suppose at least it's slightly refreshing that there's a love interest with somebody else other than Kirk. So.
And then Spock breaks up a rock. Clearly polystyrene, isn't it? But anyway, he breaks it, saying it's good for analysis, throws the other half away and it explodes.
So how come it didn't explode when he cracked it in half then? Because that's just as stupid.
Very. Anyway.
Just blundering their way around the planet.
And he says, it could be a considerable source of power. And, it's the Garden of Eden with landmines. Scotty says that something from the surface, like a beam or a transporter of some kind, has totally drained the antimatter pods and it's coming from the village. And then a flower goes for Kirk and Spock takes the hit.
You get a really daft look on Nimoy's face as it goes down.
So then Kirk calls for a beam up, which is, fair enough, but it fails. The transporters are down. And then Spock's fine, even though the other guy wasn't.
Well, McCoy gives him some medicine, but there should have been some line at this point about him being saved by the fact that he's got a different physiology than the human one. Because that's the only explanation, really, isn't it? But, they don't even bother with that.
But the thing is, as well, he then says that the medicine he'd given Spock only made him ill because he was green-blooded. And if he was red-blooded, he wouldn't have been ill. But then surely if he was red-blooded, it wouldn't have worked. I don't get that at all. It confuses me. Anyway, and then Kirk says to him, next time, call out. I can move as fast as the next man. Well, aren't Spock's reactions supposed to be quicker?
Yeah, that's the reason why he threw himself in front of Kirk.
Yeah, so in other words, you're right, so Kirk's talking arse then. And then says, don't get yourself killed. And then sort of follows up with this, do you know how much you're worth to Starfleet? At which point, or how much Starfleet's invested in you. And Spock starts to quote something. You don't know whether it's time or money or what.
Hopefully it's time, because, yeah.
And then suddenly there's a lightning. No rain, but lightning.
And the sky, now, this is... Believe it or not, they bother to remaster this. But
the sky?
Yeah, and the way they do it is to remaster the sky. So logically, it's a red planet all the time on the studio. The sky is red, and in the original version, they've coloured a storm red basically. So it's red clouds with lightning, which makes sense. For some bizarre reason, best known to themselves, when they remastered it, they made the skies black. It's like, but then you cut back to the studio and it's red again. It's like, that doesn't work. That's not in continuity. Madness.
Yeah, and then Mallory calls in from the village. Saying that they're primitive and tribal, but the communication is breaking up. But sensibly, the first thing he did was gave his coordinates, and Spock's like, those coordinates, he just said they're over there. So off they go, but a red shirt treads on a landmine.
Well, it's Mallory who comes running back, and then,
yeah.
It's a red shirt apocalypse, this one.
Yes. And then Kirk starts blaming himself, saying the mission isn't worth the lives
Oh,
of
yeah, and
three
this
men.
gets very tiresome. Oh. It's like, you must have had missions like this already, and it can't be the first time he's losing lots of men. You can't be going through this every time. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, why doesn't Spock slap him?
Yes, quite.
And then Spock's like, our friend is back. So they devise a plan to sort of distract him and corner him, and then so Kirk goes and smacks him, and then the orange man cries...
It's Akuda!
Akuda Matata.
Yeah, it is a bit. Played by Keith Andes.
Now, I recognised his voice.
Yes, he was in Buck Rogers.
Was he?
Yes, he was the Prime Minister Darius. He was bold in that. So you've got to try and imagine him, A, not with crazy red paint makeup, and B, not showing off all his chest. I mean, he's got pretty good physique, to give him his due. I mean, I guess if I had a 12-pack like that, I probably would want to run around topless.
Yeah.
But yeah, then imagine him bold as well, rather than having a silly wig.
Okay.
He was also in The Littlest Hobo.
There's a voice that keeps on calling me down the road. That's where I'll always be. Every stop I make a new friend.
Huzzah! I mean, yeah, the look for the Valians is just ridiculous. I mean, I guess it's a mercy they were reddened up rather than blackened up, but yeah.
Yeah.
And Kirk is so rude.
Yeah.
Punching him straight away.
No, and Kirk's like, I won't hurt you. And he's like, well, you struck me.
Evidence points otherwise, doesn't it?
Yeah. So he says he's the eyes of Val.
Sometimes it's pronounced Val, which is logical because it's V-A-A-L, and sometimes, particularly by Nimoy, it's pronounced Val.
Yeah.
It's just like, I know several people called Val.
Especially Val Doonican.
Yeah, well, women actually, for the most part, I never called Val. It's like, no.
Then Spock's all, pointing out the metal in his hair, which are antennae, because he's the voice of eyes of Val.
It's the one bit of the makeup that actually is half decent, to be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, that's quite clever. It's not clunky or anything. It's just a couple of little wires. It's got a Bluetooth headset.
Yeah. So then Kirk asks to speak to Val.
Val!
And Akuta says, no, only I speak to Val, and Val speaks to me. Which reminds me a bit of there's Tom Baker episode, the one where they find Leela. And
Face of Evil.
And there's that guy, and he has to put the helmet on.
Yeah.
And he's the only one who can speak to, what is it, Zoanna?
Zoanna, yes.
Yeah. But,
and that one has a big cave face as well,
Yeah.
but that one's not great, but far, far better than what we get in this story.
Yeah. Yeah, so he asks to speak to Val, and so then... Is it your bit where they see a shit snake? Or...
We see a crappy paper mache snakehead cave thing.
Oh, God, it's awful.
It's so crap. I need more beer. Hang on. A stat. So Spock surmises the snakehead is just an entrance to the power source, which is deep beneath the planet's surface, and then he gets zapped by a force field. So we get another comical look on his face. He really is having a rough episode. He's kicked around all over the place here. Apparently Vol sleeps until he's hungry, so not unlike me, really. Well, actually, no. These days I sleep until my bladder tells me I can't anymore. But, nearly 50. Kuta introduces the away team to the people of Val, a small group without children, which are forbidden, along with love. Yaman Landon has to explain about it with Chekhov grinning like a loon by her side. Everyone gets Hawaiian-style fake flower garlands. And we get a cracking line from Spock about how it makes him feel uncomfortable. That's good. We're introduced to Sayana. The women get grass skirt-type bras. Yeah. So there's plenty to ogle at for both sexes here, at least. It's equal opportunities.
Well, no, but nobody's got a beard.
That's true. They don't go in for those. I dread to think what colour they'd be. Kuta takes the away team to what looks like the Flintstones' front room, but more cheaply reproduced. And with garishly dyed fruit as well.
Oh, that looks terrible. I would not eat that.
Scotty reports the situation is worsening on board ship, and Kirk suggests a source separation. First ever mention of this, only mention in the original series. They couldn't do it here because they couldn't afford it. There was a possibility of them trying it in the motion picture, but likewise they couldn't afford to do that with their very expensive model in that. So yes, we had to wait till the next generation before we got a source sep. And even then, we only saw it a handful of times. McCoy does a sneaky scan on the Valians and discovers they're not growing old. Not at all envious, although if that meant being that colour red, I guess probably not a good thing. The ringing of a bell calls the village to Val to feed it, and Spock surmises somehow that it's a machine. Not sure what he has to go on for that. I mean, there aren't many machines that eat food. Doesn't make any sense. Kirk supposes Val is weakened when he has to feed. Again, where's he plucking this information from? He's asked, is the answer, but he's correct. He checks with Scotty and it's verified. We get a classic Spock-McCoy argument about whether the arrangements for the Valians are working for them or stagnant, looking to Kirk to make the decision. So they've pretty much got the formula for the show by this point, haven't they? Get the logical view from Spock, get the emotional view from McCoy, and let Kirk make the decision one way or the other. Back in the Flintstone house, Kirk theorises what would happen if one of the Valians were killed in an accident. Cue awkward music, where Landon is reluctant to speak of reproduction, which seems far more 1960s prudishness than 23rd century attitudes. Kirk asks Spock as a science officer to explain how they would know what to do, with the Vulcan suggesting Val would provide instruction. And you just imagine like a Lego instruction leaflet, but there we go. Despite the fact that several crew members have died, Landon and Chekhov find time for some cheesy romantic moment and some tonsil hockey, watched by Sayana and Makora. Ha! Famously played by Starsky and Hutch's David Soul, who went on to have something of a music career, including the cheeserific Silver Lady.
Come on, Silver Lady, take my word. I won't run out on you again. Believe me. Oh, I've seen the light. It's just one long night without a you.
Which is definitely our play-out tune.
No, you might prefer breaking these
No one
rocks.
is going to persuade me otherwise.
You haven't...
No, nothing is better than Silver. Silver Lady is a solid gold, silver classic. Anyway, they have a snog and enjoy it, but Akuta steps in and warns them they are angering Val. Not the most subtlest of digs at religious intolerance of unsanctioned love, is it? Via Akuta, Val orders the men of the village to gather when the strangers are asleep and kill them. He has to give lessons to kill using a purple-dyed melon. Wow. Kirk comes down on the side of McCoy, surprise, surprise, and deciding it's wrong for the Valians to only exist to service a machine. Spock points out this is in violation of the Prime Directive, not that it's called that here, but But Kirk claims that it's okay, as they weren't given a choice whether or not to serve Val. How does he know? Does he know the history of this place? Do we ever find out the history of this place? No, none of these things are explored. I mean, it's either a non-interference directive or it isn't. I can't help feeling it's, if it's a non-interference directive, unless it doesn't suit the way I think society should be, it's really not working, is it? Kirk got to be Kirk, though, and stamp out any computer that prevents Nookie happening, clearly.
Yeah.
Spock spots the Valians have disappeared, so they go to talk to Val, bringing on another storm. Now Spock gets hit by lightning, because it all happens to Spock, apparently. Miraculously, he has once more survived. Nothing can stop this Vulcan. Then the villagers appear and brain the remaining male red shirt because, get the one with the red shirt! Yeah. Refreshingly, Landon shows herself to be very capable in defending herself, despite her wearing a red shirt, and the rest of the way team do likewise. Spock points out that McCoy needn't have worried about the Valians not being properly human, as they've now learned how to kill. Ooh, burn, Spock. With Mr. Kyle at the helm, for some reason, but hey, it's cool. The Enterprise manages to pull away from the planet briefly, but then get pulled back in, having blown every system on the ship. As promised, Kirk fires Scotty and beats himself up for losing 400 of the crew. Oh, for heaven's sake, stop it. The dinner bell rings, but the Violians are being kept in a hut, and Kirk realises they can starve while doing that. Wow, subtle. He gets the Enterprise to fire on Val to further drain its energy, and ultimately destroy it in a cloud of dry ice. Not the most satisfying of conclusions. Fire at the enemy until it's dead. Wow. Plus, having completely screwed up the Valians' way of life, Kirk then pisses off with nothing but a speech about love. Cheers! Wow. Yeah, there's interesting... The next Lower Decks we're covering doesn't reference this episode, but references a Next Generation story where Picard does a similar thing of turning a society upside down and then buggering off and nobody thinking to check how these guys are doing. But
Yeah.
So again, yeah, we really need to revisit the Valians, I think, in Lower Decks.
Yeah.
We have a final argument about whether they did the right thing by giving the people of Val a figurative apple, with Spock getting gypped about looking like Satan, because in what way does he look like Satan?
Pointy ears.
Does Satan have pointy ears? I don't know.
Think so?
I mean, he's
But I mean,
famously
he's
red.
red.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Which is the colour of the Valians, isn't it? Or are they orange like Oompa Loompas? I don't know.
Oh, don't. It is laughably poor. The moral of the story appears to be that the Prime Directive can be ignored if a computer is stopping natives snogging, which is their Roddenberry given right, of course.
Yeah.
It's the least satisfying of the Kirk versus computer stories, as he doesn't get to interact the computer or outsmart, he just zaps it.
And
'Cause it's
also, the
hungry.
computer is a fucking paper mache snake.
Yeah, we learn nothing of how the society ended up this way. Plus, it comes on the heels of a far better version, of course, in The Changeling. Plus, it's completely the opposite message of what we come to think of as Trek. You know, infinite diversities and infinite combinations. Oh no, Kirk doesn't like that. It's got to fit his worldview, apparently.
And,
Thank
you
heavens
know,
we got away from that.
and also, you know, supposedly this is paradise. They don't have children, so there's no... I don't know, maybe they always had two genders. Possibly they've got more than two, but at least two genders. But if they don't reproduce, there's not need... Do you know what I mean? There isn't need for it anyway. And then they're all like, oh, only the men must meet. It's like, oh, fuck off. And at one point, in one of the fights, Kirk's got loads of the reddy orange paint all over the back of his top.
Wow.
It's just...
Well, at least we hope that's from a fight and not a bit of offset dalliance. Yes.
But it's just...
It's rubbish.
bollocks.
Yeah.
It's really
Not sure it's
bollocks.
the worst of the season. I mean, in some ways, Catspore is sillier, but I think this is the most egregious just because it just ignores what the prime message of Star Trek is supposed to be.
And I mean, I get that when they first go down, they are working on the basis that this is an advanced society because of the well, you know, could be because of they can tell that things are artificially generated. Hence the surprise of Mallory when he says the people are primitive. But the moment they discover the people are primitive, then the Prime Directive should apply, even if it hasn't up until that point.
I mean, okay, so it hasn't got fully developed at this point, so I suppose you've got to give it some leeway, but it's so pure, oh, they're not fitting our vision of how people should be. They're, you know, effectively they're being cowed by their religion and stop doing the fun things we like to do in our 1960s hippie culture, so it's just awful. Sorry. Really
But
bad.
also as well, when you've got McCoy and Spock's like, you know, if you think about it, it's really well ordered, and he doesn't
it's
think-
working for them, as he points out.
And then he's like, oh, and McCoy's like, oh, humanoids shouldn't do this, that, and the other. Well, Spock is a humanoid, and he's right there.
Yeah, it's pants.
Yes.
That's a pants.
Yes.
Let's find out what other people thought. You never know, somebody might like it.
Okay. We've heard from Jeff, who writes, it's a bad one, but so silly I can enjoy it. It also seems to be the episode from which most non-Trek obsessives get their impression of the series, especially with the high red shirt mortality rate.
Yes, I mean, that one really kicks in
Yeah.
this story, doesn't it? Yeah. And the boss says, this episode I remember more for the imagery than the story, mainly the villagers who look like grown-up Oompa Loompas,
Yep.
and the big snakehead thing. The story itself turned out to be mainly a rehash of previous episodes, mostly This Side of Paradise and Return of the Archons. The scenes with the Enterprise being pulled into the planet's orbit were very familiar as well. It's disappointing that we're only partly through Season 2 and they already seem to have run out of ideas. We start with a landing party arriving on a pleasant-looking planet, and just by looking at them I could see what was going to happen. There were 4 red shirts who were there to show that the planet wasn't as pleasant as it looked, and a yeoman who was there no doubt to randomly fall in love with someone. I was right about the red shirts who did at least get killed in a variety of different ways. My favourite being the landmine rock guy. Yeah, it says that's his IMDb entry. Yeoman Landon did surprise me, though, by more than holding her own when the villagers attacked. Yes, that was one of the few good bits. There were a number of times that I laughed, but they were mostly at it rather than with it. Yeah. The one good thing about the episode is they did discuss whether they were doing what was correct in terms of interference rather than just ignoring the prime directive, as usually happens. At least they stopped the computer this time by doing something other than Kirk shouting at it, but again, wasn't drawing its power by firing phasers, just what they did in Who Mourns for Adonis. Yeah, pretty much. I thought this was one of the weaker episodes of the season so far. Yeah, you ain't wrong.
What did Sampo and Yona make of this? I very much doubt that Yona was impressed.
Hello.
Hello.
So we just watched the Apollo.
What happened in it?
Well, Kirk arrived on a planet, found some natives, killed their god and told them that their religion was wrong. And
It's the one where Mr. Satan and his fellows are finding a paradise.
yeah, I mean, were they insinuating that Spock looks like Satan?
Well, it looked like that. I don't mean Spock looks like Satan,
Yeah, didn't really
but
get that.
the situation looked like that.
What a strange episode.
Yes.
I mean,
Well, first of all, they had just learned that the place has deadly flowers, and then Chekhov goes to this little gardening thing and says to what's apparently the love of his life, I have always wanted to take you here. Like, what?
yeah.
How many? Was there four men died, and Spock almost died.
Like three
Twice.
times.
Yeah. What about?
Yeah.
I can't do this. This is just ridiculous.
And taking into account all that happened, I mean, I already forgot that the first third of the episode was really boring. They were just walking around in the jungle and Kirk was lamenting things and saying like stuff about paradise, which was, I guess, supposed to sound smart, but was just like, yeah. But then it really picked up when he found a literal red skin, punched him, then he started crying and he said, "Don't worry, we come in peace."
You come in peace.
That was so... Yeah. Then they found a giant paper mache snake. Because of course paradise and snake and
Well, I'm a little disappointed about how the wall died.
yeah,
It's a lot of smoke came out of wall's mouth. Well, why didn't they throw the explosive rocks to the wall's mouth and make it explode?
good question. I mean, I suppose they weren't powerful enough. I mean, I guess it took the Enterprise like 30 very boring seconds to shoot. I guess that's a lot more power than just exploding rocks. But I like what you said. You said that it was the most boring death of a god you've ever seen. And I agree with you. And it's funny, I mean, this was like, I think, one of these episodes where, you know, here are some hippies just enjoying life. That's bad. They've got to be productive and all that and learn about sex. But I mean...
the one where they were trying to speak about sex, but nobody wants to say the word out loud, and they just...
Yeah, it was so awkward. I mean, that was British office levels of awkwardness. I mean, when it was like long silence.
And then Spock eventually says, well, they are receiving information needed somehow. Yeah. And how did they actually, in the end, got the information? Kirk saying, well, you're gonna figure it out. Goodbye.
I mean, they'll all be dead inside a year, I guess. I mean, from a disease or something.
It's like in The Sims where they just...
So yeah, there are no bacteria there. They killed the one thing that was protecting them. I guess they lived all the germs there and then they just fucked off.
Yeah.
Good job. So yeah, what a strange... I mean, but I think we actually had fun with it. It was so ridiculous. I mean,
it wasn't the worst episode ever. It's
no.
Just...
Plus, I mean, the woman got to kick ass.
Oh yeah, she did. She really knew her karate.
I mean, that's almost the first time I remember seeing it in Star Trek. I mean, it might have been others, but
clapped my hands and said, "Yeah, baby."
Yeah, woo! So yeah,
little cheering.
Yeah. So okay, so best episode ever, I guess.
Yeah. Interesting.
Or not. I mean, no, it was silly. It was very silly, but but you know, I mean, we weren't angry when the episode ended. We were,
Yeah.
I mean, we were a bit bemused, but I guess that's a win.
Cannot see, but I'm smiling.
Okay, well,
Yes.
I guess that's it.
Yeah.
Hear from you next time.
Definitely.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Well, at least they found fun in it.
Exactly, yes.
Yeah.
That's obviously the way to cope with this episode.
Yeah,
is just
we
to
come
laugh
in
at it.
peace, smack.
Yeah.
And yeah, why not throw those explosive rocks?
Well, yeah, as they said, I don't think that had quite enough explosive power in it to make a difference, whereas, you know, phases from a starship is going to do a bit of damage, isn't it? But,
But most boring death of a god ever.
Yeah, and I've always wanted to take you to a deadly garden. Yeah, what does that say about Chekhov's moves?
Yeah, and all that. And you say very British awkwardness, yes, but the casts are American.
Yes, it's United States since in the 60s, struggling with it for some reason.
Yeah.
Well, for supposedly a comic effect, that's the
Yeah.
thing, and it's just embarrassing.
Yeah, it just makes me think of.
Let's talk about sex, baby. Let's talk about you and me. Let's talk about all the good things and the bad things that may be. Let's talk about sex. Let's talk about sex.
Yeah, maybe not, eh?
But I mean, you're right. What's her face? Yeoman thingamy Martha Landau Calrissian?
No, Landon.
Yeah, I mean, she had the moves.
Yeah, she certainly did. That was one of the few impressive bits.
Yes.
Next up, we hear from Llama God.
Llama's log, Scotty, Fixie Tree, Croy, Noi. Don't open your eyes, you won't like what you see. The devils of truth steal the souls of the free. Now, this is a very frustrating episode, very frustrating. Now, there's a core of a good idea here, but there's also the core of several ideas here, and it comes across as a kind of greatest hits of Star Trek to date, and we've only had a season of it, but it's doing that anyway. And none of them particularly very good. We've got the main theme here, which is what seems to be the main theme of freedom versus blissful ignorance. You have the natives of this planet that the Enterprise crew are investigating, and they seem to be happy, but there's the argument, would they be happier if they were free? So there's that going for it, but it's all been done before. The blissful ignorance side of things has been done in this side of Paradise, and we've also got the unconvincing papier-mâché computer that's controlling the populace. Okay, we haven't had this giant snake here before, but we've had that in Return of the Archons, and I'm sure something else. And we've even done the whole teach the natives the meaning of this thing that we Earth people called love, and that was done in Catspore. And arguably, all these themes were done better in the previous episodes, even in Catspore, because that had stuff of interest going on. I mean, it was a bit weird, but, stuff of interest. On the plus side, the message is slightly different in that it's not arguing that we need to be able to produce to be happy. It does talk about growing and bettering oneself, which is an improvement over this side of Paradise at the very least, so it's not quite as capitalistic. And we do get a nice moment where Spock chides McCoy for taking a very human-centric point of view, because of course humans have one set of beliefs, and indeed different human cultures have different sets of beliefs as well. So yeah, to try and homogenize and then impose those views on another species, yeah, that's exactly the wrong thing, and Spock's right to call him out. So that's interesting to see that done there. But unfortunately, it's all hidden behind some huge problems. There's already the aforementioned questionable set designs. There's too much of the episode being spent up focusing on Kirk bemoaning things that he should have learned by now anyway. Yeah, he complains about casualties and having to do things by the rules, but he's had casualties before. He's broken the rules before. These are things that Kirk didn't really need to do. I mean, they're trying to do a Pike in the cage kind of thing, but it just doesn't work for Kirk's character, so there's no point doing that. They also have a very strange approach to the Prime Directive in this episode. They're ordered at the start, apparently, to scout the planet and make contact with the natives, but then later Spock does talk about the non-interference directive, so which is it going to be? Which is it going to be? I mean, their very presence is interfering. I mean, maybe they're figuring out the Prime Directive as they go along here, so yeah, they're not great. It's not great. Of course, the big problem is the natives of the planet. I'm sorry, I forgot their name, but it's the people living on the planet themselves. And when we started watching the episode, Joe did say, is this going to be another racist one? And I was like, I'm not sure. Yeah, it's not great, is it? It's not great. Yeah, they wanted peaceful, tranquil natives, and they've basically gone for basically Pacific Island type garb and accoutrements and dwellings, and it's just a copy paste. It's not with inspiration by it is literally just Polynesian designs. And yeah, admittedly, they have the crazy white hair, which makes them look a little bit different, and they have red skin. But the red skin, there's problems with red skin as it is, and the tone of red it might be degrading on the version of the episode that we watched, but the red hue's far too close to brown. It does look like doing brown face in a big way. way in this episode, so it's more than a little uncomfortable. And as well as that, the episode itself ends on a bit of a racist joke, by not only rubbing the message of the episode in our faces, but then comparing Spock to Satan. So yeah, I know exactly that's how he's describing all the publicity things, but even so, it's Kirk and McCoy taking the piss out of the entire Vulcan race for looking a bit devilish. So yeah, that's not great. There's that. And there's a really bizarre question of what exactly does Val use as its power source? Apparently it needs to be fed with fruit and vegetables, and that is able to power a planetary defense grid. Really? I mean, maybe he's got a couple of Mr. Fusions running down there, but it's just very, very odd. Very, very odd. On the plus side, we do get to learn a couple of things about the starship. We do learn that the source of separation is possible, and then they forget about it for another 20 odd years. Scotty has some really good moments in this episode, and there's a nice moment where Spock laments how more human the people of Gamma Trianguli 6 have become when they start killing, which is a nice little downbeat message there. So, as I say, there's a germ of something there. There's a germ of some interesting ideas here, even if it is rehashed ideas already at this point. They could have done something with this, but this ain't it. This is not it. So, yeah. Of course, as ever, I'll be interested to find out what other people made of this. I hope everyone's knees are recovered by now. And until next time, glory to you and your cast.
Knees?
I don't know. I don't understand the reference.
Oh, it's because of the coronation, isn't it?
Oh, I see.
Yes,
that wank.
No, we did no kneeling for that. I did a bit of singing, but no kneeling. Okay, Spock calling out how wrong it would be for them to force their approach to one civilization, and then them just ending the episode with doing just that.
Yeah.
That's the basic problem. Is that not only have they got it wrong, but they had the right answer and they ignored it. It's just bizarre.
Yeah. And do you think it's interesting to try and compare the colours? I don't know what version.
No, it was bright red on the DVD version. So
but would it
felt less racist as a result, because it's
like
just balmy. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we've gone down that route.
But then, would it have looked that red to viewers at the time, or would it have looked more like...
I dread think what it was like in black and white, how most people saw it at the time.
Yeah, would it have been a bit like Native Americans? Oh, look, they're all peaceful Polynesians.
Yeah, I mean, definitely the grass skirts, there's a Polynesian look to it, but the hair is just wacky, and I think they were doing, for their time, the best they could to make them seem alien rather than, referencing a particular nation. But I think as soon as they start putting garlands on people, it's like, oh,
yeah,
okay.
And you're right, there is far too much focus on Kirk whining.
Oh, that is just so boring. Yeah. Who's next to give this a kick in?
Drew and Tracy?
Yep.
So that was the Apple.
It was.
And what do we think of that one then?
I think it falls into the category of iconic-ish, but not a classic.
Really? You're going with not a classic
Not
there?
a classic.
All right, let's go through some points then.
Okay.
So opening scene.
Yep.
Red shirts beam down.
Four
we knew that
men
was
in red
not
shirts.
going to bode well, didn't we? Crikey, Riley. So, first red shirt.
Yep. It gets darted by the flower.
It gets darted, yeah, that's fine. Second red shirt gets hit by lightning.
No, I like that one. It just turned red and disappeared.
First of all, why was he on his own? Because he was away
Because he was
them
needs to
all.
be electrocuted.
And secondly, there was no kind of like Kurt going, "Oh my god, my crewman's just thinking."
I did feel like when he was going, "Oh, I knew his father, and what I could have done something." You could have promoted him to not be a red shirt.
But that was after.
Yeah.
Like he copped it. He wasn't like, "You need to be over here with us." And then when he died.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden the lightning was coming again, wasn't it? And Kirk shouted something as they run, and I heard
yellow alert.
But you think
I need
he
to take
said,
cover.
We're never gonna know. But he just went like that.
There's a lot of mumbling on this.
There was
a few mispronunciations we noticed, wasn't there?
And then the next third red shirt went standing on the mine.
Oh yeah, the rock mine,
which was just...
And the fourth one got clocked by the stick.
Yeah. So I had issues with this, and I kind of did say to you, why do female officers always kind of need to kind of get comfort from their male colleagues? Like, I don't know what this
60s,
red shirt woman was, but she 60s. Was like, oh, and actually kind of snuggling into Chekhov, and then Chekhov was being a bit lechy with the hand around the waist.
But she was reciprocating, is what I say. She was reciprocating. They was obviously together.
But were they though?
In a minor way, yeah. She kissed
But this is not the only episode. No, I'm not talking about the kiss, but I'm just talking about they always feel it necessary to kind of comfort the female officer, and she's
Yep.
an officer on a starship. She shouldn't need to be.
I think she's an ensign, but yes, I
But
see
you know
what
what
you're
I
saying.
mean,
do,
yeah. But she shouldn't need to be comforted.
No. When Spock, when I was having a bit of the conversation and then like the silly music's going on about, they were talking about sex and Spock has been all bashful. Why is Spock being bashful?
He
That's
has
an
no
emotion.
emotion.
I was imagining like if Tuvok was in that
Yeah,
scene,
yeah,
he
yeah.
would just like lay it on the line
Yeah.
and just say what's going on, innit?
Indeed.
He should not have been bashful.
So we have to talk about what I thought initially were like grown up Oompa Loompas, weren't they? Because
Yeah, it was
they
like
were
from
just-
Jersey Shore, weren't they? Or like the Newcastle one, isn't it?
That's Geordie Shore.
Oh, yeah, is that Geordie Shore?
Yeah. Why
Jersey Shore is
the
the
New
other
York
one.
Yeah. Why from Geordie Shore?
Well, because they were all orange, aren't they?
Oh, okay, that's a little bit harsh.
They are, they?
But we had to talk about Akuta.
Yeah,
Because as soon
Akuta.
as I heard his name, I just started singing Akuta Matata. It's a wonderful thing. And it means no worries, except when you get punched in the face by Kirk.
I know.
For crying out loud. Kirk was just like, ow! And then he was crying. And you're like, Kirk, you're a
He's like, I'm not going to
bastard.
hit you again. He's like, you've done it already.
I mean, he just gave him a wallop in the face, didn't
Yeah.
he?
So obviously, there's a big thing about this. Should they interfere or not? Isn't it? You know, that's the big thing about this.
They were talking about the Prime
Directive. Yeah, they don't mention it, but yeah. And like Spock saying no, they're all happy, and like McCoy and Kirk are like, no, we need to do this because we need to get involved. I just feel like, you know, they said, oh, they never get ill, and Val does all the plants and that lot and all the fruit. The Cerritos needs to go back there in a few years and find them all dead because they're all like got syphilis, and there's no fruit there, isn't
Oh,
there?
fuck me, you're jolly, ain't you?
No, I'm saying that's what would happen in reality, wouldn't it?
Really? Well, it's the Eden. It's
Yes.
the planet of Eden with like, well, no joy.
No.
Anyway, should we leave it there? This was all right. I was kind of more interested in this than I would normally
I'd say
be.
it's all right. That's one of them ones, isn't it? All right. It's not a classic. It's
not-
a little bit iconic. The Val
This is about the
cave
third
set.
one on the trot. You said it's not a classic.
It's all right. It's all right. I'll watch it any time, but it's not great.
Nerd. Leave it there.
Okay.
See you later, guys.
Bye.
Bye. Oh, she also went to a Disney place.
Yep.
Yeah. And you're right, Spock would not be bashful. He would just go, "Are you referring to mating, Captain?"
Yes,
Or
and
something like that.
Do it really dispassionately, but
Yeah.
he would talk about it.
Yeah.
Or maybe not, because he's clear that Vulcans don't like talking about reproduction in a mock time.
For them, but why would he have a problem for anybody else?
I don't know. It doesn't make any sense logically that they have that hang up, so, yeah. Rubbish.
And in terms of the female officer always needing comforting, that's the time it was written, I'm afraid.
Yeah, welcome to the 60s. Okay, last up we hear from Purry.
Hello, Orcs. Perry here to talk about the apple. Yeah, it's the other one off that video that was at the bottom of the bargain bin. And not much else can be said about the episode. So, well, actually, quite a lot can be said about it. For starters, this episode is like, it's not just got a high redshirt death toll, but like, it's like a million different ways to die on the artificially fake alien planet. You know, we've got death by killer flower, death by lightning, death by exploding rock, death by having head staved in by an idiot tribesman. You know, they really did vary it in this one. And like, if you showed someone who knew the red shirt trope this episode, they go, "Ah, see, yeah, look, it's happened. That's typical," and it really isn't when you watch the series. But this episode, it almost is the one that people can always bring up and say, "Hey, look at all these red shirts." Now, saying that, Spock doesn't have a much better day in this episode either. He also gets hit by a flower and struck by lightning. Fortunately, he only hurls the exploding rock around. I actually quite like that scene. Just really broke up parts of him. Weird polystyrene rock hurled a half aside and it explodes. Oh, that was unexpected. There is a kind of the episode. It does try to give itself this sort of moral quandary, because you have this culture of people, weird, overly fake tanned, I think, but with white eyes. I think they were trying to go for something to look alien, and it just looks like really wrong makeup, almost verging on blackface. But I don't think that was the intention. I think it was to look weird and alien, and the big white hair. And these perfectly healthy tribesmen who are not aging, not dying, but also aren't allowed to do any form of sexy touching, which is, instantly Kirk's up against that. And yeah, they had that weird scene where they started trying to embarrass the yeoman again. That's just kind of creepy nowadays. But by the way, they've got this weird alien culture, and they say, oh, but they've totally lived in service of this big machine with a sort of slightly shoddy looking snakehead. I actually quite like the set, but they've got some charm. And we can't just then take that all away from them and say they'll sort themselves out. And actually, yes, now Val could have kept himself alive by not damaging the Enterprise, neutralizing his antimatter pod. It's kind of this little subplot bubbling along that Scotty's trying to keep the Enterprise from burning up in the atmosphere. Interestingly, Kirk actually talked about something which is almost like a saucer separation. A little bit of random lore for you there. It's blow off the engine nacelles, he says, instead of the whole engine, but still a mention of something like that. But if Val had actually left the Enterprise alone, they'd have sodded off. He'd have been fine. Like, Starfleet, Kirk would have just naffed off back to the ship and they'd have probably left the system. But by attacking the Enterprise, he meant that they hang around. Kirk finds out and decides that these people are stagnated and need, to be freed from their seemingly quite nice and idyllic lives. I mean, aside from the lack of bonking, they didn't seem to have many problems. And yeah, that's kind of the ultimate plot. Yeah, so this one does just meander. It's a lot of them walking around the planet, getting slowly murdered by various things, but without a sense of suspense to it. It's just almost like they're kind of wandering around a field full of rakes and just constantly stepping on them. So yeah, it's really not the best stuff. And yeah, the feeders. The other thing, then they said, oh, we've left them. They can now develop in a normal course. There's like 24 of them there at max. I don't think we even see that many. There's like 9 or 10. That's not a viable population. They are dying out. Like you have genocided this very small culture. So well done, Kirk. Good call on that. So all it remains for me to say is do keep up the good work. I always look forward to the podcast, and I hope to feedback in the next one. But until then, bye for now.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah, Val is an idiot to have tapped the Enterprise. I wasn't sure whether them not being able to beam up was Val as well, or whether that was just because the Enterprise was low on power, but it was Val as well, and that's equally idiotic. But,
yes, because I presumed that he was draining the Enterprise's energy banks and stuff to power himself, and then there was a reason for it, but if it was making him weaker, that was stupid.
Yeah.
And no, it's not the best, is it?
No, I think that's fair to say. Hopefully it's the worst, because if there's worse than this in season 2, I mean, I know there is in season 3.
Yeah, I was going to say season 3.
But, oh dear. Yeah, not good. Not good.
No.
Right. Well, okay. It's another chance for us to drop some subtle hints as to what we'll be covering when we finish Lower Decks, isn't it?
Well, I had a suggestion for what to say.
Oh, yes.
Which is that although it's science fiction, it isn't Trek, so it's going to be on the other feed.
Yes.
But we will still be covering the original series.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not going to... Whereas in the past, we've paused, haven't we, our original series coverage for other things. We're not doing that this time.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to carry on with the original series fortnightly, but in the other week, it's going to be a science fiction series, and because it's following on from Lower Decks, it's going to be animated, but it's not Star Trek.
That really doesn't narrow it down much, but that's fine, because,
Well, you wanted to reveal it next week.
Yes, we will be revealing it finally for those who care. Next week's Lower Decks coverage. So, yes, next Wednesday, on the 17th, we'll be looking at Lower Decks Trusted Sources, an ultimate episode of Season 3. And the next original series episode, thankfully, is far, far better.
Oh, good.
Recording on Tuesday the 23rd, a bit earlier that week because there are things going on. We'll be covering Mirror Mirror.
Ooh.
Yes.
Beards.
Yes, goatees. The original Mirror Universe story. Can't wait for that one. Jolly good. Take care, everybody. Mind the exploding rocks.
Yes, or something.
Or something, and we'll catch you next time. Bye.
Bye.
The opening music for this podcast was provided by the talented Drew Barker.
The artwork was created by Andy Palastides.
All music referenced is for illustrative purposes only, and no copyright infringement is intended.
Find our website at borgcast.libsyn.com.
And we have a YouTube channel as well.
You can find the Borgcast playouts on Spotify for your listening pleasure.
Visit our Tumblr site at borgcast.tumblr.com, where you'll find images accompanying the episodes discussed in this cast.
Send emails or MP3s to borgcast@gmail.com.
Or you can find us over on Mastodon. Our addresses are on the show notes for this podcast.
Come on, Silver Lady, take my word. I won't run out on you again. Believe me, oh, I've seen the light. It's just one long fight without you. Here I am a million miles from home. The Indiana wind and rain cut through me. I'm lost and alone.
Shut it down!